Okay, Rabbi, I have to tell you, I'm a bit of a pessimist, as you might know. So we'll see. As I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, first week we had an in-person audience. They are not here tonight, so it's just Uzah and we're on the Zoom. Um, and don't know. Hopefully this year can continue, but I'm trying to do it on Zoom. But have to have an oil in order to do a share. Okay, so we are up to Netzach, which is here in on the screen in Sif Yud. So just to review, Chesed is giving without any restraint. Gvura is restraint without any giving. And Tiferes is the middle meter between the two of them. So it's called Rachamim, where you give, but there's a catalyst to giving. In other words, it's not unrestrained. Something provokes your pity or your mercy, and that's why you give as a result. Of course, you give more than you go lifting mishur sadin. So Tiferes is a inclined towards chesed, but it's not unprovoked. There is a catalyst for the giving. It's not giving as an outer directed. It's there's a catalyst which led it to occur. But so now that's the that array of Chesed Tiferes is followed by Netzach Hod and Yesod. So the Yud he says Hanetzach. Let me make this a bit bigger. There's no reason why it should be this small. Hanetzach Hanhogas HaChesed. Netzach is Hanhogas HaChesed. Aber eno Chesed Gomer. It's not complete Chesed. The Chesed memuzak beding tzas. So it's Chesed which is moderated by din. Ubichlauze. And he gives a very beautiful explanation here. Machim is damesh shura l'shato. Something which looks bad in the short term. Abemesu tov amitis leviatachlis. But it's really ultimately true good according to the purpose. Kamo. Such as Shemasham the tzaddikim miut avonosam ba'olam hazeh. The tzaddikim are given difficulties in this world because of the small amount of sins which they've done. To benefit them and bestow good upon them in the end of Olam Haba, Tova Mitis V'Nitzchius, which is a Tova which is true and eternal. Anything like this is Nichlau Banhogas HaNetzach. So that's an important point to make. It's not just not just a play on words, but Netzach, eternity, is the long perspective, right? And it means that in the short term it might look bad. In Nitzchius, in eternity, it's good. Also, Nitzachon means a victory. So again, it's something which in the end is victorious. In the short term, it might not be victorious. There might be all sorts of difficulties and setbacks and all sorts of negative things to overcome. But it's for it to be positive in the long run. There's a Zohar, which Tzaddik likes quoting very often. Lake in the hurricane, he did nothing but go HaChochmo. There's no light like the light which comes out of darkness. So that is a Netzach phenomenon. In other words, the darkness is necessary in order to appreciate the light. There is a darkness which gives you a much more powerful, much more significant, and much more permanent light at the end, which is the light which comes out of the darkness. So the darkness is part and parcel of the light in the long run. That's a Netzach Midah. Then we have Yurav, which is Hahod, right? Hahod on Hokas Hadin. This is it's on Hogab Din. Avon Eno Din Gomer. It's not an absolute din. Rak Memuzak B'Chesed Tzas. It's diluted. It's tempered by Chesed. V'Chlauze, and this includes Harashim Izdam L'Shaito Shu Tov V'Arev. Something which is bad, although it looks like it's good in the short term and pleasant in the short term. Abem Esul Onish. But in truth, it's a punishment. Just like they give the Rishonim mute, same payment on the minority of the small amount of good of merits which they have in order to destroy the world to come. Hashem pays his enemies in front of him in this world in order to destroy them. Chadai melezeh, and this included anything like this included Hod. It says calls the nil ma'abedi be'agros al sham di yamasu omer sham atzimtzum b'chulei ayin sham yesod. See that for the fundamental concept. When Hogas olam b'chlalo. This is the the conduct of the world in general. Now here he says a very interesting thing, which is I'm skipping something here. 1 second. Yeah, so there's a line missing here. I didn't realize this. There's a line missing. The line missing is Yisod. Oh no, here it's the line over here. Sorry, I read it wrong. It's not Ayin Sham Hayisod, but Ayin Sham. Period. There should be closed parentheses over here after Ayin Sham. Hayisod. Yisod is the way the world is conducted in general. Meaning, Netzach and Hod combine together to make Yisod. And the Yisod is the way the world is conducted when you take these characteristics of Netzach and Hod, which are built themselves on Chesed and Gevurah, and you mix them together. Now everything becomes very complicated. Chesed, Gevurah, and Tiferes are pretty straightforward. One is giving, one is restraining, and the Tiferes is giving, but not with a catalyst. But here we're talking about a giving which is really, which looks like it's not negative, a giving which is looks like the other. Let me say it better. But Netzach is restraining, which is really giving. Hod is giving, which is really restraining, and Yesod is a combination of the two. So basically, it's a very complicated. Not basically, it's very complicated because you have this complicated Netzach, complicated Hod, and together they make an even more complicated Yesod. But he says here a very important thing: Tiferes was inclined towards Chesed, but Yesod and Hogam Mutzas Ben Netzach V'Notek Tzas Yoser Ledin. It inclines more to din than to Chesed, because the world is a world of Hester, primarily a world in which things are hidden, things are not apparent, and therefore things are more restrained than they are revealed. There are times when we get revelations, and it's interesting because the Mekubalim say that Nevuah comes from Netzach and Hod, and Nevuah obviously talks about all these tremendous difficulties in understanding Kodesh Baruch Hu and Hog of the world, right? So you have the idea of Netzach, which is that, guys, you're suffering now, but it's good for you in the long run. And Hod, which is things are good now, but they're not necessarily good for you in the long run. And then you have how that is concealed and merged together in Yesod, which is hodgepodge, not literally hodgepodge, but from our perspective, something which is very confusing to us to understand how these things work. So a Navi tries to cut through that for us and tell us, you should know, this is how Hashem's master plan is in the long run. I'm telling you now, Netzach, Hod, you're experiencing it as Yesod, right? But there are, the idea is that if you go behind it, you'll find the Netzach and Hod behind it. Okay, so now another point I want to make, which is that in Kabbalah also, Netzach and Hod are very often interchanged. The Kabbalah also calls them train, rain, the Lom Isparshin, two friends which are never separate. And Moshe represents Netzach and Aaron represents Hod, and that's we're going to come back to that later on. And of course, if we think about it, Moshe seems more like Din, and Aaron seems more like Rachamim. Aaron was more Oyev Shalom, V'Royev Shalom, right? And therefore, these things, although we separate them out for the purpose of the Spheros, right? It's not so simple. And the idea of Moshe Rabbeinu being restrained is restraint, which is good. And the idea of Moshe Aaron being giving Sometimes it's not so good. It all depends. But Chas v'sholom, not to say anything about Moshe and Aaron specifically. It's an important point to make about all the figures which are associated with Kabbalah. Just like masculine and feminine in Kabbalah don't mean male and female. They mean giving and receiving, right? So too, the figures who are associated with Midos in Kabbalah, Avram with Chesed, Yitzchak with Gvura, Yaakov with Tiferes, Moshe with Netzach, Aaron with Hod, Yosef with Yisod. They are bechinas. They're aspects of these types of hanhaga, which are manifest in these people. But these people were malachim. You can't say pin them down and say, "Oh, Avram was this, Yitzchak was that, Yaakov was that." They are used as examples and as archetypes, not as actual people who. This is how we define them. Okay, so that's a very important fundamental principle in Kabbalah. Another point to make is that with the Tzvili, Netzach, and Hod, right? The that which is Hod represents Netzach represents eternity and victory, but it doesn't have splendor to it. Whereas Hod represents something which has splendor and majesty, but it doesn't necessarily have eternity to it. And it's not necessarily always going to be operative. And the good example of that is the Beis HaMikdash, right? The Beis HaMikdash was Hod, but it's not eternal. It's fantastic when you have it, but we didn't have it for most of Jewish history. On the other hand, Torah, which is not necessarily, it's much more abstract and much more hard to grasp, and doesn't have that external majesty of the Avodah and the Beis HaMikdash, but Torah is with us all the time, right? So therefore, you have the Netzach, which represents Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu, and Hod, which represents the Avodah, Aaron HaKohen, and they one is represented by eternity because it's always with us. The other is not represented by eternity. But the flip side is, you can always have, again, in any aspect of life, you can have Hod, right? If you make a beautiful menorah, that's Hod, right? If you so there is, even though Hod in its in its utmost manifestation is something which we don't have, right? Since we don't have the Avodas Beis HaMikdash, you can have aspects of it. It's not as if it's extinct. It's alive and well. It just manifests itself in different ways. I hope that's a little bit clear. Now, Yisod, again, is something which we're going to have to come back to and speak in greater detail. But obviously, the tzad, because I'll say that tzaddik Yisod Olam, right? The tzaddik is the Yisod of the world. Why? Because the Yisod is a middle midah. It's a conduit, right, by which the shefa, the influence comes from on high. The bracha comes from on high to below, and the avoda from below goes up to have an influence on high. So it's a pipeline which comes down and goes up. I just realized that my video is not working.
Rabbi, I had a quick question.
Yes.
I remember seeing that everything in creation has all 10 spheros, sort of like whatever, some molecular structure, but certain ones might have more emphasis. Is that correct?
Yes, everything has all 10. Yes. So what's the question? Yes, that's true.
So when you give examples, menorah is Hod. You would say, well, everything has an element of Hod to it.
Right. You can. That's what makes Kabbalah somewhat difficult to pin down. You can only give aspects. You can't say that this is absolutely this is absolutely that. Which leads to a very, very basic question, which is, to what extent does, and this is a question which applies to Mekubalim, but also applies to us. To what extent does Kabbalah help us in our Avodas Hashem? Now,
okay.
Since I'm
but we could say we look for the Hod in all things. I mean, somebody could do that, but certain things will have a stronger expression of it.
Right. But since I'm a Litvak, half Litvak, half Yetka, but I'm using my Litvak side today. So therefore, it doesn't bother me that things are abstract. I don't care if it has actually an impact on my avodas Hashem or not. But yes, if it does have an impact on our avodas Hashem, it's not just an abstract concept. So then you're going to have to find in your avodas Hashem how this knowledge of the power of the various different spheres is going to have an impact on what you do and make your avodas Hashem enhanced. Um, I think that if I could be a skeptic, which I am, so then I think most people who talk about Kabbalah don't necessarily have the Kabbalah influence their avodas Hashem, or what's even worse is that they claim that it does, but really they first shoot the arrow and then draw the bullseye around it, right? They decide what they think Kabbalah should tell us, and then Kabbalah, lo and behold, tells us that thing. So that's why Kabbalah, you have places and movements which gave Kabbalah a bad name.
Okay, we can go weiter, but why not just be simple about it and say that we can give the literature answer that the limud is the avoda.
No, you
Doesn't have-
can. That's what I'm saying. I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with that. But then you have people who try and make Kabbalah into New Age, consciousness and things like that, which I'm skeptical about. Okay, so good base. Kol shisha spheres hanal. All these 6 spheres, Chesed, Gvur, Tiferes, Netzach, Chol, Yesod, Hemakol fi ma'aseh bnei Adam. They all depend on our deeds. Shegam Chesed Hagamul hu rak lefi misha magil ba ma'asav, which is amazing chiddush of the Gra, right? It's amazing chiddush, which is that even Chesed Gamur, it doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? I personally I find it very difficult. Because to me, it seems that Chesed Gomer means it is independent of a person's deeds. But the Gra is saying, no, even Chesed Gomer is not Lefi Ma'asav. If you get to levels of Chochma and Bina, which are above the array of Spheros, of the lower 7, so then it's possible that everything is completely Chesed. But on the level of the lower 6, lower 7, here we're talking about the 6 in the middle, it's all based on what a person does. So therefore, Tzaddik Yisod Olam means, there's an avodah which is necessary in order to activate even the sphere of Chesed, which is a very, very profound idea. And the Chenikro Shisha now B'chlal and Hogas HaMishpat. All these are included in Mishpat. Even Chesed. So we talk about the Chesed, that is something which you have to activate. Human beings have to activate. Now, one person can activate it for other people. The entire world it gets sustained because of Rabbi Chanina. Chanina ben Doisa, Chazal say. So it's possible for one person to activate for many people. It's possible for one deed to activate for huge ramification, like Piskli Pesach Pisklo Shel Machat, open for me and opening the size of a needle. But there has to be some sort of activation. That's what I'm saying. It's the Fi Masov. There is no such thing as an Isarusa de Ela from completely, when something comes completely from above without any Isarusa de Tata, which is why Chazal say that at the end of time, in order for Mashiach to come, because Baruch Hu is going to have to send some sort of king, perhaps, who's going to be Melech Kosher Kahaman, and then maybe we'll do tshuva, right? So he's indicating is that all of these things require activation. Okay, Yud Gimel. Because Bashira Keser. Now, like I said, if you go above the lower six or lower 7 series, he hasn't addressed Malchus yet. He's just talking about the Vav Tzavos, the middle 6 right now. But if you go above that, so then Bashira Keser Rachmim Gedolim Bein Kates. Chanal, since Keser, and I don't think he's saying Keser to exclude Chochma and Bina. I think he's saying Keser as it's manifest to Chochma and Bina. is great rachamim without limit. Chanal. Chenikra erech apayim. It's called erech apayim, extended countenance. In other words, it's the Kalashon Azor erech anpin, right? The long face. So this is something where there is a tremendous, powerful shefa from above, and that is not contingent on human behavior. The Galafi and Hagazos here rak latachlis la'asid, and this is also for this hanaga is only for the ultimate purpose and the ultimate future. Commotion nichtov the kam siyatish malik is going to get to later on. So included in this is the simple meaning of erech apayim. What's the simple meaning of erech apayim? Simple meaning is shemamtinu marich aflet tzadikim l'shoim, because Baruch Hu waits and doesn't get fully angry and is patient for tzadikim and Rishoim as well. So erech apayim brav chesed v'emes, right? So in the long term, in the long game, so there is this concept of everything has to come to tikkun, and there has to be ultimately phenomenal chesed, but that's only in the long term. It's not for the short term, right? And in the short term, it requires avodah. It requires very strict adherence to the rules, right? That a person can't rely on, Hashem's erech apayim, so therefore, echta v'ashuv. I'll sin and then I'll do tshuva later on. It doesn't work that way, right? Whatever Hashem's master plan is for the long term, and whatever the tikkun is, in the short term, you're not allowed to take that into account. That's not your business. And how it works out in the long run, we don't really know. But somehow, in the long term, there's this Aracham bin Hanoka. Sorry?
The long Arachan pin, this image of the long face represents a Zaidi. Is that grandfather? Abba, like Chachma's Abba. So what is?
Yeah,
what is this?
I don't like the taking the abstract concept and making it tangible.
Well, I'm just saying we call Chachma Abba.
Why does he have to be? Why can't he be clean shaven?
Oh, I didn't say beard.
Okay.
Well, a beard's rachamim, but yeah. No, I was just trying to understand the partsuf again. So the Arach Anpin represents the grandfather. Is that correct?
I don't know. No, I don't think so. I think it just represents. In other words, it's not abbreviated. It means long face versus short face. In other words, Zeranpin means a miniature, and long. No. So why do you want to give it? Why do you want to give it an additional anthropomorphism here?
Well, I'm just saying, what's the implication? So when I think Zeranpin, I think
about Hester. Things are concealed.
Well, I also think of a shorter face, a younger figure. Yeah, it's the mitos that are broken.
You think whatever you want.
Okay, I'm reading.
It doesn't. You can think of whatever you want, but I'm not comfortable with it. Because it's too much. It becomes too concrete.
Okay, so you
also part of the Gro's fundamental approach to Kabbalah is it's all mashal. So there's pros and cons to using a mashal, but if you can use your metaphor and still make sure you know it's a mashal, okay, go with it.
Yeah. So I just want to say out the mashal. The Arachan pin you said represents a patience, right?
Go ahead.
I'm just trying to. Everybody's Arachan. I think those words frighten people. Arachan pin, Zeran pin, the Arachan pin, and then Arachan pin, and then there's a Tika Kadisha, which is above it.
No, that's a different system. We're not dealing with that right now.
Okay.
No. We'll get that later on. We get to Tzimtzum. Okay. So this story about Anhogas. So about how Kosh Baruch relates to the world. We're not talking about Tzimtzum concepts. V'shisha Sfiras Chagas Nehi Hanal Shem Anhogas Amishba Kanal Nikruzer Ampin. Right? This is called this the miniature face. Perish miut apayim. There's a limit to the slack which are cut, right? Shu anhogas hamishpat is the anhoga of judgment. V'gam anhoga shel achshav, and it's the here and now, kanal, right? Umiut chesed, and it's a small, the chesed is diminished. Shurak lemisha zoicha kanal. It's like you said in Yud Beis, it's only to somebody who's zoche. Okay? So that idea is, again, there is the long run, and we're not allowed to take out. I want to emphasize this. Something was speaking to somebody before the show tonight. You know, there's always a danger in Kabbalah of antinomianism, which is, if I'm pronouncing correctly, which is that you could say that, like Shabtai Tzvi, right? That Baruch Hashem Matir Yisurim, and saying long run it really doesn't matter because long run everything is good, everything is Chesed, everything is Ratzon Hashem, but we're not allowed to do that. That's something which is absolutely forbidden because whatever Orach Ampin is, we don't live in that state, and we're not allowed to function according to that state. If it happens, if it breaks through occasionally, it's temporary, and it's not something which is supposed to have a long-term ramification. We have to live in the Hester, in the Tzimtzum, and function according to Zer Ampin, right? And this is I once saw a marshal. I forget who it gives. One of the Hasidim gives. He says, "Why are Hasidim allowed to daven late? Not at the right man." So he says, "The marshal ma davar doime." It's a sefer Mishloim Hasidim. Marshal ma davar doime. It's analogous to a you have a king, and the king has ministers, and the king has servants. Or it says the ministers can only come at the appointed hours, right? The servants who are close to the king, I think maybe the mashal was that their people are related to the king. I don't remember exactly. But the point is that the people who are close to the king, they can come anytime they want. So the people who are kind of like the misnagdim, they are limited to coming at the certain times because they don't have that intense relationship with the king. But the people who have this intense relationship, they can come anytime they want, and therefore they don't have to adhere to Zmanei Tefillah. Okay, so the Gra, who's Gra and Ramchal and the Mekuban we're using here, learning about it over here, would absolutely disagree with that and say, you don't have the right to say that. You don't have the license to say that, we have this Orech Ampin type Anhoga. The Kodesh Baruch is going to wait for us, and whenever we down, it's fine. No, it doesn't work that way for us. And nobody, according to them, not even the greatest tzaddik, has the right to say that because everybody operates within the here and now, not within the long term, which is totally transcendent and meant for Losi Lovo. Okay, so finally for tonight, we'll finish with the Dalit, because the Spheres Malchus, where he pays attention to what's going on below us, and to reveal his kingship of the world, that his Shekhinah should be manifest in the world. That we should become known that Kodesh Baruch Hu resides within us. Am Yisrael is the makam for the Shekhinah. And that HaKadosh Baruch Hu receives our Maisa Mitzvahs, Utfilasam, and our Tfilah. So that's how it comes known that Hashem is with us. And it's where Hashem reveals what he reveals, or makes sure what happens in order that we should accept the Olam Malchus. Now, this thing, which of course we're going to have to explain in much greater detail, but obviously we're partners with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in doing that in this world. In order, because then that's why we know the Shekhinah is the only name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu which is feminine, because normally HaKadosh Baruch Hu associated with giving, masculine. Again, masculine, feminine are giving and receiving Kabbalah, not male and female. So but the name of HaKadosh Shekhinah is feminine because it depends on our Maisa Mitzvahs and our Tfilos, whether there's Malchus Hashem in the world or not. So the idea of a tzaddik being a conduit, which is associated with Yesod, is distinct from the avodah of Am Yisrael, which is Malchus. That's something which really we have to expand upon a lot more as we learn more Kabbalah. But the idea is that there, the Shefa comes down to the tzaddikim and who the tzaddikim are. Could be a lot of tzaddikim, a few tzaddikim. Again, like could be only Rabbi Hanina. But then there's the avodah of Klal Yisrael. Avodah of Klal Yisrael is avodah to bring Malchus into the world. Whether you're experiencing the Shefa or bring the Shefa down or not, that's a separate thing. It's a beautiful thing to be one of the people who brings down the Shefa. But your job is to manifest the Malchus Hashem in the world. So, in essence, it's like taking the Rambam, who says the world is here for the elite, for the Yichidei Skula, and the Rabbi Yehuda Levi, who says the world is here for Am Yisrael, and making them reconciling the two. Yesod, the connection is through the tzaddikim. Malchus, bringing down the Shekhinah into the world, that's through Am Yisrael. Okay, we'll stop here for today. Thank you very much. We'll see if we're able to muster an oilam next week. Shkoyach. Have a good night.